Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
What does the Roman Catholic Church believe about ghosts? How does a priest approach ghost hunting? What's the Catholic perspective on other areas of the paranormal?
Well, hey there, and welcome to the 119th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Ben, and that voice you just heard was that of my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad. But before we get to those perplexing and unusual questions, it's time for our weekly paranormal contest. And how do you pronounce that?
I think that's Schuller.
Schuller?
Yeah.
From Dover, Delaware, correctly answered last week's question. What former U.S. Navy vessel has been called the most haunted ship in U.S. history?
Well, the answer, of course, the USS Hornet, the World War II aircraft carrier, now decommissioned at a floating museum in Alameda, California.
All right, this week's question is a little bit different and lighthearted. All right, who was the famous ghost hunting dog that first appeared on American television in 1969? If you can handle that, call us locally at 401-766-1240 or from anywhere in the U.S. at 800-449-1240. Or write to us at eno@onworldwide.com. I did that last week. If I don't announce a winner during the show and you still think you have a shot, drop a line to me at bennettbehindtheparanormal.com. The winner will get an autographed copy of my dad's latest book, Turning Home, Gods, Ghosts, and Human Destiny.
Now to our guest. Yes. Okay.
I was joking.
Okay, sorry. I won't explain what that was, folks. Ordained in Providence in 1993, Father Robert Bailey is a Roman Catholic priest and pastor of St. Maria Goretti Parish in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. In addition to his duties as a parish priest, Father Bailey is a fire department chaplain and spiritual director for the World Apostolate of Fatima. The spiritual director for the World Apostolate of Fatima?
No, just for Rhode Island.
Just for Rhode Island, okay. That's a big organization. Of most interest to us, though, Father Bailey is also a paranormal investigator. In his own words, quote, "Having an interest in the paranormal since childhood, I began to feel a calling to assist those in the area of paranormal research with my priesthood. I felt that the Church and the Catholic faith could bring some ages-old wisdom and spiritual authority to the table in the area of the demonic. I have been well received with gratitude and eagerness since I have stepped out in this area with the permission of my bishop," unquote. Father Bailey continues, "My friendship with Ryan Buell of the Paranormal Research Society and my work with him on various Paranormal State episodes has given me both experience and exposure along with credibility in the paranormal field." I might want to ask you about that. "I have also been contacted by some paranormal groups in the local area for spiritual assistance. Because of this, I have had numerous requests in my local area by both individuals as well as paranormal investigators for assistance. The need became such that I co-founded a group to be at the service of investigators and individuals who may encounter negative or demonic forces. Not every investigator/group may feel that they are equipped to handle these manifestations." Sometimes I wonder if any of them are. "And indeed should not attempt to I'm sorry, this is the bio, I should shut up. Indeed should not attempt to deal with it without a deep faith, knowledge, and spiritual authority or calling in this field. The members of this group of warriors share a deep faith and have the spiritual gifts that complement one another. We feel that God has somehow brought us together in his plan for this work." Do you have a website, Father?
Yes, we do. It's pwsm-ri.org.
Okay,
so as in Paranormal Warriors of St. Michael, pwsm-ri.org.
Okay, and we'll give that again before the end of the show, so people. Okay, and it's a pleasure to have you in the studio today.
Yeah,
that's not a pleasure we often have. Somebody's 200 zillion miles away by phone.
Yeah, you're like the second person.
Really? Well, it's great
third,
to be here.
Because there was a couple the first time.
Yeah.
My old home state, so it's really great.
That's great, yeah, okay.
So it's like a homecoming kind of thing.
And Ben's got our call-in numbers for today.
Oh, yes, our call-in numbers for today, as I previously mentioned, are 401-766-1240 in the local listening area and 800-449-1240 from anywhere in the USA.
Okay, now usually Ben takes our first questions, but I've been waiting for this for 40 years, okay? Your head's on the chopping block now, okay?
Uh-oh.
Okay. Now, I've been dying to meet someone in your position, Father, just so I could ask this, okay? When I was in the seminary in the 1970s, I got creamed in 35 different ways for studying the paranormal, okay? even though I was under the wings of some of the church's finest experts at the time. Now, how in heaven's name did you get away with it?
Good question. It's something that I always felt, as I said in my bio. I simply went to my bishop, Bishop Tobin, and I shared with him some of the frustrations in the paranormal community, particularly in the areas of demonology, and how, we were never taught this in the seminary. So
tell me about it.
Yeah. So, and that some of the complaints were that people who had these kind of problems weren't getting a hearing from priests, and that I felt that I wanted to be sort of a bridge with the paranormal community and the church, which I thought had a lot to bring to the table of the paranormal, particularly in demonology. And so he was very open to it, and he gave me his blessing.
You were already a priest?
Oh, this was just a couple of years ago.
Oh, see, that's the difference. See, I was a young seminary student. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
And even though I probably spent more time in the seminary than a lot of priests did, because when I was a lifer, I went in the minor seminary.
I went to OLP high school.
Oh, did you really? Okay.
Yeah, but it wasn't a minor seminary at that time.
Okay.
Just a high school.
All right. But in any case, so that may have been the difference. See,
yeah.
Once you're a priest, there's not much they can do about you.
Yeah.
Okay. But in my position, I was under authority and
really...
immediate way.
Well, there was also a lot of misunderstanding. It was in the closet, so to speak. It's not something that you spoke about in polite, society. Yeah. And there was just a lot of stigma around it.
Well, when I first started, it was the early 70s. 1973, out comes The Exorcist movie.
Exactly.
And all hell broke loose. Everybody got interested in the paranormal, and the church.
And everybody thought they were possessed.
Yeah, well, some of them were. Now that I look back, well, I'm joking, not very funny, but the church just clammed up.
Yeah.
Church authority, and instead of just approaching the situation and coming out and saying what the beliefs were and explaining it and being educational, they just clammed up. And I got caught in the middle of that. There was tremendous paranoia among the bishops about it, and I was a handy target. So we lived in different times.
Yeah, definitely different times.
Okay. Now, again, because I have a question here. You weren't taught anything about this in the seminary. I understand that sometimes during deacon year, which is the last year before ordination, generally, somebody might bring it up.
I mean, we talked about good versus evil and all that, and moral theology. Yeah. And, I went to a more traditional seminary that was... that would have taught, it wasn't kind of whacked out. Because some seminaries, in the country, from what I've heard, taught there was no such thing as personified evil or a devil. Or
not in my day. It was a little more consistent in my day.
Yeah, it wasn't in my day. So at least I was at a place where more often than not, people would be more predisposed than in other places.
I see. Okay.
Although it only came up once. Do you remember a while back, I think it was 2020, when they had the exorcism of Gina, quote unquote?
Yes.
Which I thought was an awful example, because I didn't think she was fully possessed at that point from what I was seeing. I thought she was oppressed.
Yeah.
But that got, at least we had a volunteer seminar for those who wanted to go and talk about it.
Very good, yeah. Well, the thing was, ironically, even though I was being nailed by my bishop, I was working with Father John Nicola, people who were the best at the time, and also Father Lawrence Cotter from Ogdensburg, and I worked in psychiatric hospitals with him, officiated at a couple of exorcisms that were blessed by the doctors at the hospital, all very, very, very hush-hush. And, of course, the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing, so, anyway. But in any case, ironically, it wasn't the Roman Catholics who nailed me. It was the Orthodox, because I don't usually talk about my religious beliefs today because I have to deal with everybody under the sun. But in 1975, I joined the Orthodox Church and went to their seminary to finish my theology. All right, and that was in New York, and they're the ones who blew me out of the water. Because the discipline there was, if anything, greater than it was in the Roman Catholic seminary, and that's what happened. So it's not the Roman Catholics they complained a lot, and I got all kinds of grief, but they never threw me out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so anyway, that's ancient history. So Ben, I'm sorry, I've been stepping on your time here.
Yeah, whatever you do all the time. Anyway, Father, tell us about the group you founded and how it works and the ins and outs of it.
I'd be happy to. Again, since my exposure on Paranormal State and then seeing the work that I did, word of mouth just traveled in locally, and I started getting phone calls from local people in Rhode Island to assist, to come to investigate. And just one by one, just these things started coming into place. I met my co-founder, Paul O'Brien, from at Slater Mills. She was with a common friend of mine. She was helping out there with ghost tours they were doing there. Mm-hmm. So I met with her, and we...
let me just say, we have a global audience. Slater Mill is in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and it's considered the first...
founding of the
American Industrial Revolution, the first mill. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh yes, and it's still like it's a museum now where you can go and see things, how it was. But it's also supposed to be haunted. So they started doing a ghost tour. So I met her there through a common friend, and then I got called on to a case, and I thought that she was a psychic and a sensitive, and I asked her to come with me. And the combination of myself, someone with sensitive psychic gifts, and a paranormal investigator, it just took off. It's like, wow, this is a win-win situation. So we went from that to another one, and then finally, me and Paul and myself decided we need to form a group because our phone calls were getting more. And with that, we formed what we now have as the Paranormal Warriors. There's 6 of us, and we work very well together. Our gifts really mesh together, and so that's our history right there. And we decided to name after Saint Michael because he's the great prince over evil. So we started going the Warriors of Saint Michael. So I said, well, I think we have to change it a little bit so that people know it's a paranormal, because there are other Saint Michael Warriors, other religious organizations.
That's true. Yeah.
So we went as Paranormal Warriors of Saint Michael.
Okay. That's very interesting that you work with a psychic, because, back in my day, which is about 20 years before your time, had there been a hint of anything psychic or mediumistic, I would have been out the door like a shot.
Oh, yeah.
Now, so what's changed?
Well, I mean, I think, again, we have to... I don't think much has changed in some people's attitudes. Because
an official church approach to this. As much as there ever is,
right? I don't know whether. I mean, it's not something I've ever discussed. It's just I remember reading. It wasn't taught, but it was in a moral theology book that I had that said that that psychic gifts are part of reality.
Oh yeah. They never denied it. They just didn't trust it.
Yeah. Right. And then there was a misnomer about what a psychic was and what a psychic wasn't. And again, my being exposed to all different. Ecumenical really broke down a lot of barriers of what I thought psychics were. I thought they had these crystal balls and they were, pay $20, Miss Clear will give you and it's not that way at all. And in fact, these people with psychic gifts were being called to do warfare. They knew they would be called to fight good versus evil, and that's how we call it divine design, how it happened. So, there's still misunderstanding about the word. There's still people who are uncomfortable. But my being with them, I think, has created a bridge of understanding that I'm able to tell people that psychic gifts are a gift from God, just like discernment of spirit. We use different words in the Christian world than in the metaphysical world. They say psychic, we say discernment of spirits, gift of knowledge, whatever. But basically, it's the same thing as long as you attribute it as a gift from God, and they do.
Yeah, I hear you. So. Okay, Ben, you
yes. Well, you kind of already went over what demonology is, but you
get into a little deeper. I don't know.
Yeah. Could you go a little deeper into demonology?
What are demons?
Okay.
Because we have our own, over my experience.
Right. Well, demons basically are fallen angels. They are of an angelic order that rebelled against God, and so they work against anything to do against God, and to try and drive a wedge between us and God, or to try and take us away from God. And that's basically what a demon is. But there are different types of demons, different order of demons, just like there are 9 choirs of angels, there's choirs of demons, different levels, different types of demons. But they're all for the same thing. It's to do harm to souls.
Okay. Obviously, that's the platform from which I began. Mm-hmm. Actually, you know where I started? I started in 1970 with my first case, 1970, 71, 72, with the idea that ghosts that were not demonic were souls in purgatory.
Sure.
That's
one part. Yeah.
Okay. And my very first case, at least with 6 other seminary students, all of whom got grief because they were involved with me with it. I looked at it, I said, these people don't seem to be dead at all, never mind in purgatory. And I began to develop this. I don't know if you're familiar with my work at all, but there's all these theories that are
No, but
way
I will be
different.
after this.
Okay. Way different than most people. So when it came to what are commonly known as demons, we call them parasites.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The analogy, well, the terms I would use might be the same, but I found out very early, particularly working with Ed and Lorraine Warren on the case in 1974 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I was the Paul. I wouldn't give my last name because I was afraid of getting cremated by my bishop. I found these things did not seem to have the same theology we had. That was my impression. Mm-hmm. Working with Father Bill Charbonneau, who I don't know is Monsignor Bill Charbonneau now.
I've heard the name.
Yeah,
definitely.
He was very active. He was sort of the you of the 1970s,
oh, okay.
I guess. And very, very fine priest and a great guy to work with. But he didn't quite see it the way I did. But over the years, I've approached it that these things really do not have the same theology that we have. They are simply life forms trying to eat. And they push certain buttons, and you can see how that would be transposed, in my opinion, right over to the idea of demons, because it really, the effect is the same, but whether they're trying to separate people from God, specifically in a theological or moral way, I don't seem to see that. They seem to be evil in a way that they don't realize.
No, I get what he's saying. It's like God's an ultimate positive force, so they try to break us away from that so they can get us to be more negative and then feed off us.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
And I believe there's other types of dark entities such as elementals, which are not fallen angels. They're part of the elements, 4 elements, part evil. And I always forget what the third part is, but anyways, and then there are other negative parasites. But the ones that we seem to be battling right now are the fallen angels. But I would agree that there are other negative.
Yeah.
Negative
they're a lot more positive than negative.
Right.
But again, our point of view is that you're dealing with parallel worlds, and we're the new kids on the block. And we're not the center of it all,
right.
But anyway, there are ways of reaching out, and we're approaching it that way. We've had some non-human entities, and I don't think ghosts are spirits of the dead. Your predecessor, I'm not going to mention his name on the air, but he in the diocese, let's say, he would say, "Well, I met with him one time." He said, "I don't believe in ghosts. I believe in demons." Okay, well, I mean, I think our ghosts are pretty much in people, bodies and all, living their lives in parallel worlds, and I've touched them and felt bone structure.
Wow. In
certain cases, and that's very rare. But anyway, and I've also I had a physical altercation with a parasite, and I felt bone structure. Wow. This is during the case in Bridgeport, and I'll be talking more about this in my next book, which is about what ghosts have to say about God, quote unquote, and at least how I interpret. Anyway. So that's so. I guess the trouble is, as I always say on the show, it's our language. It's hard to even talk about anything. To talk about God or spirituality is tough enough with our language, but to talk about this stuff, it really gets convoluted. So again, I don't think they have the same theology. I mean, people say, well, the power of the name of Jesus. Well, absolutely. But you really want to see a stampede? Use the name of ISIS.
Really?
Holy mackerel! Yeah, they hate that. She's a great defender, as are many of our ancestors, in my experience. But of course, Jesus, my oldest personal friend,
right?
Certainly.
Well, see, I find, isn't it interesting? I find very powerful the Virgin Mary.
Absolutely. And again, these are names.
So these are, in different belief systems.
Yeah.
Different, but it's they don't like to hear her.
No, they don't. Well, that'll bring. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. How much we put into it, but. Let's see. You got another question here, Ben? Yeah. Okay.
Of course, I always have questions. How do you tell if somebody wants to join you or not? Like, do you know if they're up to it?
That's a good question. Our life as warriors is much different than a paranormal investigator. We suffer after every investigation, spiritual retaliation, and then that's not just coming from in the air being slapped. But literally all hell breaks loose, and they'll use anything. They'll use people, events. I've had things going missing mysteriously. I've had aggravations, and it all works on your mind. And the attacks that I get are mostly on my mind.
That's where they use bishops against me.
Yeah, making me feel this way. Oh, you're not a good pastor. You're not a good priest. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. Look at everything that's different things. But everyone in my group suffers. And sometimes even people, their loved ones. I mean, because when the demonics, when we get them out, like we did last night, we had a successful, I pray God, deliverance of a house. They really threaten us, and so a lot of people want to join, say, "Oh, this is fun," but they don't realize what they take. What the risks that they take. Physically, spiritually, whatever. And we are really warriors that. We know that everything's fair game for the demonic. So right now our warriors are closed because we have 6. Maybe later on we'll expand, but right now our energies are so good together, and we've all been versed in warfare, and we're all accepting what's to come.
That's an extremely good point. We're always warning people. And as I've said on the show before, I was invited to speak at against my better judgment, at a conference in Florida for beginning ghost hunters. And they said, "Okay, well, what's your advice?" I said, "Don't." And then there were 200 people looked at. I said, "Look, you have no idea what you're getting into. This is not bird watching. What you're getting into here. You don't know what you're touching. You're dealing with other worlds. I don't know what words you want to use. Demons, alien, whatever you want to touch. It's dangerous. But it's like being an undertaker. Because somebody has to do it, I suppose.
Yep.
And those who are called, it is a vocation, as you say.
It's a calling within a calling.
Sure it is. For you, yeah, especially. So, but how do you get that across? But you've just put it extremely well. That's what we're trying to.
That's part of our goal of our group is education. It's a major part that we want to. That's why we're going to eventually try to get into Skype and all this, because there are various reasons. But demonic activity right now is at, I think, an all-time high.
I think you're right. We find every time we turn around, we're getting requests.
And people say to me, "Is it that much?" I said, "Yes, there is." And there's, there are different reasons for that. But the part is, if you're a paranormal investigator, sooner or later, you're going to come into this. If you don't have a faith system to fall back on, if you don't know how to protect yourself, you're going to take something home with you, or you're going to get hit. So we're trying to teach paranormal investigators. You got to have these elements in there nowadays if you're going in, because you don't know. You think you're going in to make contact with Aunt Mary, who's supposed to be in the house, it might be Beelzebub. And
Bingo.
That's happened to us several times.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we have to take a commercial break on that cheerful note. We'll be right back Behind the Paranormal with Father Bob Bailey. Stay with us.
New River Press is proud to sponsor tonight's segment of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Benjamin Eno. New River Press offers the best in unusual New Age books. Stand by the side of tonight's host, Paul Eno, as he battles poltergeists and helps suffering souls and families in the critically acclaimed books Faces at the Window and Footsteps in the Attic. Plunge deeper into the paranormal with Paul and learn about its influence on human history, its action in our daily lives, and its ultimate meaning for us in the best-selling Turning Home, God, Ghosts, and Human Destiny. Available now from New River Press, publishers of unusual books. Visit newriverpress.com, amazon.com, or your favorite bookstore. And set for release late this year in one of the most unusual books on the subject ever written, Paul gives us Dancing Past the Graveyard, What Ghosts Have to Say About God.
Very similar. Oh, hello. Welcome back to Behind the Paranormal, where I can hear with Father Bob Bailey, our good friend from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and a ghost hunting priest. Now, before we continue with Father Bob, I want to just mention we have someone called in with the answer to our question, which was which dog in American television was a ghost hunting dog and started about 1969. But we took down the answer, Denise here at the station, but did not take down the name of the person. So whoever called in that answer, you were correct, but please call in again and give Denise your name and phone number and address, please, so that we can arrange to get our prize to you, okay? So please call Denise. And again, the number, you can call 762 888-978-1240. And while we're at it, our call-in numbers today, if you'd like to talk to Father Bob or us, 766-1240 or
800-449-1240.
Thank you, Ben. And we're listening again at WON 1240 AM in New England's beautiful Blackstone Valley or on the internet, onworldwide.com. Okay, back to Father Bob.
So what's the answer?
Well, I'm not going to say it on the air. That's very tricky. You're worse than one of those parasites. All right. Okay. Now, let's get a little deeper into this. What do we do on this show? How do you approach what in what you call demons or we call whatever? How do you approach them? With love, with authority, or with anger, or
no? If we discern, if it's clear that it's a demon, we do battle, and we call it battle, because they are not. There's nothing goodness in them, and if you try to be kind to them, it's not going to work because they're devoid of demons are devoid of love, of anything that's good. So it's definitely a battle because they attack us, some of my team, and But I deal with them with authority, and I command them to go to the foot of Jesus. I don't command them to be destroyed because I don't think you can destroy them anyways. They're angelic spirits, but I just command them to go to the Jesus to where, and He will handle them.
Now that was the way I started out, of course, too. Mm-hmm. But being the brother of a patristic theologian, one who knew all about church history and this sort of thing, there was a big controversy in the early church which was really never entirely resolved. At least I'm not aware of any council resolving, and that was, in the end, even the devil would be saved. And that includes... thank you. Okay, we got the person called in, and we have... Thank you very much. But speaking of the devil, we have... there was an issue that even the demons would be saved. Mm-hmm. And in the Eastern Orthodox Church... there is still some discussion of that. Mm-hmm. Now, I base all my theories, and Ben and I now, on what we experience out in the field. And I've been at this for 40 years. And once you've been at this for 20 or 30 years, you begin to wonder, are the original explanations I started with good enough to explain what, and in my case, I judged that they were not. Mm-hmm. We have been doing experiments for a while now, and especially now with a case we're working on in the Midwest, with a particular fellow who, from the St. Louis area, where his parasite, the one that is bothering him, and we've come to the conclusion it is a demonic or parasite, has expressed what he believes is a very sincere regret for what it is and the fact that it has to feed upon him. Now, again, these things, as you know, will... I'll not say they'll sometimes be what you expect them to be, all right? But in this case, and in a number of others, with this increased activity, we've noticed several different species of these things, and some do respond to love, and this is something that we're pursuing, not in a naive way, I hope, right. But in the, how did St. Cyprian of Carthage put in the endless hope that faith will prevail, Sure. And so that's, but I hear where you're coming from. But I kind of took a different path. Not a different one, but an additional...
Different perspective.
Right. Anyway, but that's you and that's me. I don't know, who knows who's right or...
Sure, well, I mean, our experience has always been they're very... they are not full of love. I mean, they're attacked, they're doing harm to the people. And even with us, they're wishing harm on us. But I think to bridge both of our perspectives, I send them to the foot of the cross. So if Jesus finds something, if in the end there is something to redeem, Jesus will do that. Yeah. So, I just ask St. Michael to take them to Jesus.
All right, I hear where you come from. Now, Ben, you, people sometimes get alarmed at this, but I kind of throw you into the thick of it.
Yeah.
When we're doing these things. You actually at times will be in... not deliberate communication, but they will sometimes tell you things.
Yeah, like that one time in Burrowville.
Yeah. So do you feel comfortable talking about that?
Well, you didn't really ask me anything.
Okay.
Burrowville's a hot spot.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, but it's Burrowville, Rhode Island, northern Rhode Island, that whole, especially Pasco, a little village of Pasco. Yeah. It's for some. Yeah, this gets.
I had a
into
case there.
Geotechnics and why certain areas are hotspots. But there was a case, if I may just give some background, we've been working on for 10 years.
Wow.
And the people will look at me in 10 years. Said we put the time into these cases, and the more you look at, the more you find. Well, some might say, well, the more you put in. But we have a case in Connecticut we've been working on since 2005. We're now it's turned into a UFO flap.
Wow.
And all kinds of stuff. So Ben sometimes is just very extremely. I guess I don't know. I hate to use the word psychic, but he's very sensitive to this stuff. What kind of impression do you get from them? Do you think they can be saved? What's your impression?
I don't really know, since I haven't. The last time I was in direct contact, I didn't really know. I was just sort of like, oh, all right, I'm the way I am because of this, and this, and I didn't think it was because of parasites.
Well, you sort of
demons.
feed me the information.
Yeah, that was when I was in indirect contact, when they're just like, oh, you're a special one, aren't you? I'm just like, shut up, just leave me alone.
Yeah, pride. Feed the pride. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they're just. I don't really care. I mean, like people are like, "You're really special." It's like, no, just.
No, if you weren't right, I would never throw him.
No,
it's his age. But he's not.
Well, we have a junior in one of the paranormal teams that we team up with to do it. We have a kid. He's 14, and yet we know he's warrior material.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. He was last night. I said, you want to join us? His father said, "You sure?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You know what? If he's going to get attacked, he's going to get attacked.
Yeah.
He's part of your family, so you might as well."
Better learn now.
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
And he was good.
And here I'm always warning people not to bring their kids.
Well, but see, this is part. He wants to be a paranormal investigator, and he wants to actually enter in with his father and mother both.
Yeah. Well, there is a site. I'll mention its name. Our good friend Jeff Belanger, but he's at ghostvillage.com.
Yeah.
And I had him on the show one time, and I said, what are you doing? Inviting people to bring their kids on this.
Oh, yeah.
As if it's some kind of skiing trip. I said that is a very reckless and dangerous thing to do. And, Jeff has his own approach, and whatever, but I disagree with that.
Well, there's a whole lot of other legal things, too. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, if something should happen and, God forbid, if it's not a ghost or if it's an angry ghost, frustrated ghost, and something happens to the kid.
Well, I've been physically injured by poltergeist. I mean, I had a gash in my leg.
I was the only one last night who didn't get hit.
Really?
With physical. People were like throwing up. People were getting choked last night, and it's like, it shouldn't be. You should be at least 18 legally to be able to do that, even with the parents there.
Well, Ben's got one more month.
Yeah, then I'll be 18.
Okay.
I can.
Anyway,
leave.
well, that's what we got. Okay, it's where are we on our questions?
Oh, there we are. All right. Even among paranormal researchers, like a lot of people don't trust the church anymore. And how are you received by other researchers and people who ask for help?
I got to tell you, I have nothing but respect, nothing but gratitude. I have not heard any negative. I've heard complaints that, like, wow, I wish there was more like you. But, I mean, talk about evangelization. I mean, they're open to anything that I have to offer because they know they want the input. Mm-hmm. Most of them. I mean, there are some who don't deal with religion at all, and so fine. Yeah. I have my own criticism about that, but those who do, when I go to conferences or whatever, meet other things. So much respect.
Excellent.
I said, I wish I got respect from Catholics, rank and file than I do with them, Well,
that's another interesting point between my time and your time. Well, and again, I was about 20 years before you were in the seminary. At the time, it was just after the Second Vatican Council in the early 60s. The American Church I don't know, it seemed like whenever the bishops were separated from the people and from the clergy, in the sense that whenever they wanted to try something new, they kind of put their hand up the Vatican. Is it okay?
Yeah.
But the priests and the people kind of were going up and getting more. Not the people, but the priests were getting more liberal.
Right.
So that by the time I was getting toward major seminary, it was there were a couple of guys in my class who were very conservative. That was considered almost to be a mental illness. They were sent for psychiatric treatment, but for counseling by a psychologist because they weren't going along with what was going on in the church. I mean, what is this? The old Soviet Union here? Yeah. It was bizarre.
Wow.
So something like demonology or approaching this, was considered ultra-conservative.
Yeah.
So that might have been another reason why I got, and that had kind of all passed by the time you came along.
Well, yes and no. All seminaries go through their periods, and when I had gone right out of high school, and I took some time off, and then I came back. I left the seminary. I had some qualms with what was going on, with the leadership there, and then I took time off, but then I came back to a whole new regime, and it was wonderful. But one of them, actually, now I'm very strong with my devotion to the Virgin Mary, obviously, and the spiritual director, but she has always been an important part of my life. I got more grief because of that, believe it or not.
Because of your Marian devotion.
And one priest said, I think it's very unusual that a young man in this day and age would be so devoted to Mary.
Isn't that bizarre?
Like, this is just for women? What? And it was that kind of a thing that just, again, it's like, where's that coming from?
Oh, brother.
So, but then John Paul II came on and just
Very,
totally vindicated me. Totally vindicated me.
Very devoted to the Virgin Mary.
Oh, I took the statue of Mary. I had a big statue in my room. I took it down in college. Oh, it was
his coat of arms had a big...
But I mean, but again, having some of the traditional things was looked at even in my day in the beginning.
Really?
In the late 70s, early 80s.
Which I guess leads right into Ben's next question.
Yeah, how do other priests react to what you do?
Good question. I think, those who believe, I think, believe in an incarnate, in a personified evil and the struggle between good and evil, respect what I do. In fact, a couple of instances I get referrals from pastors. They themselves have no idea, and I understand that, and nor do they feel adequate enough to deal with it. Some are afraid, and of course I totally understand that. It's not for everyone. So I think I've gained respect because I've responded to their parishioners, and it was all good. And some, I'm sure, I know I have detractors, but what are you going to do? In any walk of life, you're going to get detractors. So I don't pay attention to that.
Well, let me throw a case at you that this is before Ben's time, but it came. It was a Sunday night in it was 1998, and I got a call, and the fellow was very upset. He was right here in Woonsocket, and he said the police had told him to call me because what had happened with them was that the cruiser had come up to the house. Noise complaint, a multifamily house. And the police officer had gone in, no noise, nobody was in there. They left, and they could hear all this noise again. The policeman backed all the way to the cruiser and wouldn't come out. And a backup came, and somebody knew about me and said, call this guy, maybe maybe that's what it's about. Because I find that the people who run into the paranormal phenomena the most are clergy, psychologists, and the police.
Sure.
So I went down there. And push come to shove, I came to the conclusion that it was a parasite case after a lot of questioning. I don't go in and what I do is I go around and see. After 40 years of doing this, you kind of know psychic or not what to look for and all that. Mm-hmm. And so we went through the procedures, and I decided, these people were devout Roman Catholics. And we always deal with whatever religion the person happens to, deal with it with respect and. But you have to be very careful. And I wish there were more like you because I've never seen anybody who can make a dog's lunch out of a case faster than an uneducated member of the clergy. Right? So I went to see the priest in Pawtucket on this, and he said, that's when he told me he had read my book, my first book, and he said, I don't believe in ghosts, I believe in demons. I couldn't get anywhere with him. His problem was that these people were older people, but they were not married. They were living together without being married. And he said they have to straighten out their spiritual lives first. And bravo to that. But I mean, you don't just leave them drifting. You go in and, God takes us where we're at. Why can't he? And but he wouldn't budge on that. And so we had to deal with the case. And finally, but it was very difficult. I suggested the guy move because he was just tied into all this stuff that was going on. Everybody else had left this building because they couldn't deal with it. And anyway, I wrote that up in one of my books, but that was the case. How would you have dealt with something like that?
My approach, and some have a problem even with you going, would have an issue with me working with paranormal groups because in their theology I could be susceptible to getting a demon attached to me or some kind of a spirit attached to me, which I think I'm pretty well know how to protect myself. I go in, I don't ask questions about their personal life. If they want my help, I go first. Whatever they do need to maintain, for maintenance in their lives, I'll tell them afterwards. If they don't have a faith life, they need to have a faith life. If there's some things they need to change in their home and stuff like that. But I don't give prerequisites.
Yeah, you take it a step at a time. That's what I would always advocate doing.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, now let's get back to the nature of these demons, or as we call them, parasites, whatever. Tell us about some experiences you have had with demonic hauntings or cases,
Sure.
and things you have learned about the nature of these creatures.
Well, one of the first things I learned about demon cases is these entities lie.
Oh yeah.
Very often they'll say, again, it's a pride thing. Very often they'll, when I command to give them the name, they'll give a name, but always a lot of times somebody higher level than what they are.
They have a pecking order.
Oh yeah,
They even have a
absolutely.
culture. I mean, I've seen evidence of that. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And so, thank God for those with the psychic gifts, because after a while you can tell. You can tell by what, how they respond or what power they have and don't have, what kind of level they are. Last night we dealt. This is the second time we went there to it's the tribe is called Azura. It's a women. They're female demons, almost like Amazon-like. And
they do tend to have gender.
Yes, some of them do.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I think, the angels. But I mean, they have common, how we would refer to them. They do. But and their whole thing, the queen was there, and we were doing, and somehow he picked that up from 2 cases that followed him that he had helped us with. And very hard to get rid of. Very hard to get rid of. What they're looking for is they attach to him because he's an alpha male.
Oh, an alpha male. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
and they're sexual predators.
Very interesting.
Now,
you can just see the notion in folklore of the vampire kind of thing. You can just see how it gets translated into folklore like that. Yeah.
Others, I have dealt with, and I'm still dealing with a high level demon who begins with a B, a short name, but I won't say it out loud. But and he's been after and pursuing myself and my group since we began the first night that we had our meeting. We heard all kinds of noise. We did an investigation. Sure enough, it was this demon. Yeah. And his whole thing was to take me down and my co-founder and the group down because of what we were doing.
Been there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have a lot of protection.
Yeah.
And even though we don't approach it with the same terms you do.
Right.
I suppose it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it is. Because I don't have just Christians in my group. Mm-hmm. So we take the both of different cultures and traditions. We do have those of the old ancient religion of Wiccan.
You have Wiccans in your group?
I do. I have one.
Interesting.
Yes,
okay.
I do. My co-founder is.
Oh, good for you. Yeah.
But a Christo Wiccan, in other words, we agree that Jesus would have the primal place.
Yeah.
And no problem. But they have their own
they're
form
not
of.
What they're not.
No, it has nothing to do.
What people think they are.
Let me tell you, I could do a whole seminar on that. If I get criticized because I have one, I have got criticized. I don't care anymore. It took me a long time to find that out. It did me too. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that. But I was under misconceptions. So we use the best of both traditions to form protection, and it's a win-win situation, I believe.
Good for you. Okay. Well, we as I say, we work. One of the things I don't find works very well is large groups going into. So it's generally Ben and me. We have at times, not since you have been working with me, but we have a soil engineer, because I rely a lot on electromagnetic energy, geotechnics, high water tables, sandy soil, clay, all that.
Really?
All that has I find at least has some relevance. We had a whale of a case, referring to water, I suppose, didn't mean the pun, over by in Gloucester, Rhode Island, where there was a lake surrounding.
Those are like elementals.
Peninsula.
Those are elemental.
That's how people would have looked at it.
Yeah.
And so, but you take it where it's coming from, I suppose. But we do find very similar hierarchies and things. The higher demons, as you might call, we had this one in Maine. The case in Maine
that one.
And we're still kind of keeping an eye on that one, but there was a real mess. These people were managers of a resort camp, and something followed them down to another resort camp farther south in Maine, and there was a lot of energy of a negative nature there, less so in Maine, but the house, I mean, we've been in there, and you could there is this entity in there who is a big cheese, and he says, you can do whatever you want. I got all the time in the world, so to speak, And there were a number of children in what we believe is a parallel where we've gotten photographs of them who are not even involved in this, and I'm worried, a little bit concerned about them, because I've seen these things reach across several world boundaries at the same time, almost like an octopus, and feed. So we're kind of keeping an eye on that. There are Native American complications because the woman is an Abenaki, I believe, because anyway, it's complicated, but I do see much of what you have described. I might put it in different terms, but again, it's the 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Oh yeah, and their ability to make themselves known depends on their level of strength.
Very true. Now, I'm afraid we're kind of running out of time. We're going to do this again. This is great.
That'd be great.
We talk the same language. That's unusual.
Yeah.
So tell us about what are you working on right now, and what again is your website?
Our website is PWSM, as in Paranormal Warriors of St. Michael. PWSM-RI.org.
Very good.
Right now, we're actually we just ended a case with this sexual predator female demon, and now we're just going to finish up another case of a house that has a haunting, but there's good stuff and there's negative stuff happening both. So we're going in to do a full-blown investigation of the negative things.
Well, I always like to mention, there's far more positive.
There is.
Far more friends than we do enemies, I think,
absolutely.
out there, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And so, but love always does seem to be the bottom. I always joke, I'm not a touchy-feely guy, but love seems, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Really does.
And the greatest thing that we can do for the spirits, and I think we should do another show just to, on the whole theology of ghosts, because that's something that I've been trying to work on, how ghosts fit in. But it's the love that they have once we help them to either know why they're here, to understand why they're here, or to help them to cross over. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's one of the most fulfilling parts of. Well, it is.
That would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
How much time we got left here? Because there's some emails. 5 minutes. Okay. Well, let's do. See, there's never enough time. All right.
No.
Let's try to do one email. This is from our good friend. Do you have any further questions?
No, I was just gonna say we're probably not gonna get to it, or we're gonna say it, and then we'll be like, 2-word answer. So.
Here's a quick one. This is a quickie. All right. This is from Christine in Wichita, Kansas, and Christine writes. That's right. That's your job.
Yeah, considering I didn't say anything else. Anyway, hi Paul. Photography is my hobby, and it appears that spirits may be comfortable enough to be present at times, or am I intuitive enough to see them? In the Skinwalker 2005 window photo, I see several individuals, a couple of them appearing to be for approximately in the 1930s and 1940s time frame.
All right, now she's referring to a picture on our main website, newenglandghosts.com, and there's a page, Ghosts of Connecticut. And this is the Skinwalker Ranch thing that we're talking about. That's the Utah case that this case in Connecticut reminds us of. And there's a photograph of, I think you took it.
Me?
Maybe I don't know, but those two figures in the window.
That? Yeah, I think I took that. Yeah. No, I had the video camera. You had the camera.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in any case, it was very interesting, and this woman is seeing various things. But the trouble with photography is that, your mind will put something
matrixing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And which is one of the reasons I wanted to get into, and we're never going to have time, of course, is how much of this do we cause when it comes to EVPs, electronic voice phenomena photography? That's the subject for another show.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't got time. But if you want to look at that, it's on newenglandghosts.com, Ghosts of Connecticut, and because Connecticut's Skinwalker Ranch is the name of the pig, and you can see maybe what this lady's saying. Okay, a few announcements. Tuesday, March 16th, next Tuesday, we'll be part of a paranormal panel discussion on the internet show Spirit Connections with our friends Donna and Dudley Vole, we meaning Ben and me. That will be on achieveradio.com at 7 p.m. That's an internet station that evening. People are encouraged to email questions in advance to Paul at behindtheparanormal.com. Now, also plan to listen to our big 3-hour special on CBS Radio April 11th, when we'll co-host a UFO panel discussion to mark the 30th anniversary of the Bentwaters Air Base incident of 1980, Britain's Roswell. We'll have UFO greats Nick Pope, Bill Burns of UFO Hunters, and Peter Robbins, along with John Burroughs and Larry Warren, and maybe Colonel Halt himself, actual witnesses to the incident, former personnel of the U.S. Air Force. And again, our website, behindtheparanormal.com. Check us out. Show schedules, guests, upcoming and past. And our show phone number has changed. I'll just remind you again. It's 401-651-7732. That is not for on-air call-ins. That's just for contact during the week if you need to talk to us for some reason. So many thanks to our producer, dear old Craig Pelletier. And we'll see you next week, Saturday. Okay, don't worry about it. We got it. All right. March 20th, right here on WOON 1240 AM and onworldwide.com at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Our guest will be Steve Fermani, New England Regional Director of the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON. And the subject, UFOs over New England.
All right, on our regular Sunday show, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific, on CBS Radio and www.newskyradio.com, our guest will be the great Murray Silva. And our subject will be ghost hunting in depth.
Now, when Murray is on, the fireworks fly, because Murray is a Hollywood insider, Washington insider, and Ben usually asks some innocent question, and all hell breaks loose. I don't know. I got to tell you, Ben, I did work in a question about Washington. Paranormal influence, and because you wonder, Father, about the influence of these things in the halls of government. If they can do what they do in families, what can they do in nations?
Look what's happening now.
Exactly. Yeah. So, anyway, so check that out. That's tomorrow night. Again, CBS Radio, NewSkyRadio.com.
I'm going to have to look into that one.
Absolutely. Again, check our show website, BehindTheParanormal.com, and your local schedules for cities where CBS carries our show, and websites where you can hear us anytime.
All right, in the meantime, we leave you a quote from the great American actor James Dean. Dream as if you'll live forever and live as you'll die today.
Live as if you'll die today.
Whatever. Same thing.
You did a good job, Ben. Okay. We'll see you next week.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.